Vayikach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kehat ben Levi. Let's read the verses in English. Any volunteer to read the verse?
Okay, now Korach, son of Izhar, son of Kohath, son of Levi, betook himself, that is, took, along with Datan and Abiram, sons of Eliab, and An, son of Pelet, descendants of Reuven, to rise up against Moses, together with 250 Israelites, chieftains of the community, chosen in the assembly, men of repute. They combined against Moses and Aaron and said to them, and that's all that's on the page.
Right. Okay. And now, here's the main complaint of this group. ויאמרו עליהם, רב לכם, ככל העדה, כולם קדושים, ובתוכם אדוני. ומדוע תתנשאו על קהל אדוני? And in English, you have gone too far. For the entire community, the entirety of them are holy. Notice the emphasis on entire twice, and also in the Hebrew, kol ha'edah, and then kulam. This is the translation of Professor Fox. He tries to capture the Hebrew, Everett Fox, and he did it nicely here. Because in the Hebrew, we have kol twice, kol and kulam. So he wanted it to be the same in the English. And the Lord is in their midst. Why do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of Hashem? So my question is, what's wrong with that? Do you see the slide that says what's wrong with that statement? Do you see it, or did it change slides?
Yes.
Yes.
So, and you have the question up on your screens. Doesn't the Torah state in several places that the entire community of Israel is holy? There's even a Parashat that begins, Kedoshim Tiyu. Any ideas?
Yes, I have an idea. I can't put myself in the place of Moses, but I can put myself in the place, because not that I have been there personally, but I have seen this happen even in our own synagogue years ago. There was a very active person in our synagogue, a woman, very active. She had her finger in everything, and she got things done, big time, got things done. She was a fundraiser. She was in the kitchen. She was the past sisterhood president. She just never stopped. And some of the women in sisterhood got upset because she got covered. People honored her, as well they should. But some people, some other women said, well, why is she getting all this? I mean, I help, I do things. Why? I mean, I'm important. And it was a whole business. And this is kind of like that.
Okay. So taking too much cover to yourself. So,
well, Moses was not taking it to himself.
Right.
It was given to him by God.
By God.
But people got jealous.
So they got jealous, right? And then they phrase it in a way, though, that seems to echo several other statements that the Torah would agree with, that everybody is holy, that we don't believe in organized religion where there's a pope who's holier than everybody else. And let's look at some of the verses. And then I want you to compare with what those verses say and what the Korach statement is. So, for example, let's move on to the next slide. Do you see the end of last week's Parashat Tzitzit? למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. Right. So in order that you may keep in mind and observe all my commandments, and so be holy to your God, all of you. This is to all of you, right? And then in Parashat Kedoshim, it also begins with Kedoshim Tiyu. Well, the Be'er B'nai said, V'amarta alehem Kedoshim Tiyu, to all of Israel. So isn't Korach saying something that's true? Korach and his group. And now we see on the blue all of the community are holy. Doesn't that echo what the Torah says in these other places?
All the community
No.
was holy. However, there was only one person in the community that was chosen by God to lead that holy community. And those other folks, holy that they were, got jealous.
Okay. Any other ideas?
Yeah, comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what your scholar grandfather is pointing out is that it's a future condition of being holy. Children of Israel have to earn the status of being holiness. They are not holy from the get-go.
Excellent. Very, very good, Charlie. That's what I was
Well,
that's what I was trying to compare, to show the difference, right? And even in the Hebrew, you can see the
It's
difference.
conditional. It's
Conditional. It's
Yeah.
tihiyu, you shall be holy. I didn't bring the translation. Kedoshim tihiyu. That tihiyu is the grammatical form of you shall be, or if you want regular English, modern English, you should be. You should be holy. And then also in tzitzit, v'item kedoshim. You should be. I would add the should be here. So be holy. Whereas Korach is saying, we are holy. See? Kol ha'edah kulam kedoshim. It's not something we need to earn. We're holy. So there's two different views of holiness. The Korach view, we are holy by nature. It's ingrained in us. We don't have to do anything. We can misbehave. We don't have to follow all the commandments. We can rebel, but we're still holy. Whereas the Torah's view, as we see in several places, it's something that you have to earn, and you can lose that status if you don't follow the commandments. But now, and if you think about it, I don't think there's anyone in Tanakh that was called a holy man. I can't think of anybody that was called Kadosh. Kadosh is reserved to God. God, is Kadosh. We say Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Melech Haaretz Kvodo. But even Moshe Rabbeinu was never called Ish Kadosh. And this thing of calling people holy only started really with the Chassidut, I think, with the...
Michael has a comment.
It says, Ish Kadosh Aver Aleinu Tamid, by Isha Shunamit, I think.
Oh, there it is.
Isha.
There? Oh, okay, interesting. So I do. Before we get to the prophets, so my brother pointed out that in the prophets, in the book of Melachim, either Elijah or his disciple Elisha are called Ish Kadosh. So I'm gonna have to look that up. But I did find another verse that where is it? No, not here. What about this verse? Ki am kadosh ata al Adonai Elohecha. ובך בחר אדוני להיות לו לעם סגולה מכל העמים. In English, for you are a people consecrated or holy to your God. To God your God, right? Adonai Elohecha. And Adonai chose you from among all the other peoples on earth to be a treasured people. So isn't that exactly the phrasing that Korach uses too? We are Kadosh. So I think you always have to look at the context. I always tell my students, my Hebrew students, the first and foremost, the root is important, the shoresh, the binyan, the category, but the context is the most important thing. Let's look at the broader context of this verse. So let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 14, and you'll see that taken in a larger, broader context, it's not saying you are holy per se, no matter what you do. So let's go there, and we'll see that the Torah says this do you see it now in the broader context? It starts with, you are children of a God. You shall not gash yourselves in front or shave the front of your heads, because you are holy people. And then immediately after that, you shall not eat anything abhorrent. Kosher laws. These are the animals that you can eat, etc., etc. So, if you do all of these things, then you are kadosh. You see what I'm saying? You can't isolate this verse, right? People sometimes do that when they quote out of context. But I'm trying to look at the context, and I think this is very different than what Korach is saying. The Torah here is saying, you are a holy people if you do, verse 1, you don't gash yourselves. You don't, right? When we warn, we're not allowed to do that. This was a common practice in the Canaanites, to gash themselves, to shave their heads, usually the signs of mourning. We will not eat certain animals. And so in the broader context, that makes you holy. That's how I understand verse 2, for you are people consecrated or holy to your God. Okay, so this is my grandfather's explanation of Korach's sin, Korach's mistake, a warped view of holiness, that I am holy no matter what I do. And this is in contrast to what the Torah says in several places, that is conditional. Now let's move on and ask ourselves, so what was his punishment? We know what his punishment was, because you were here last year.
Yeah.
What happened?
Swallowed.
The earth swallowed him.
The earth
Right.
swallowed him up. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And Moses, first Moses, 1 second. Let me share my screen. First Moses said, it's not my fault. I didn't do anything to them. And pay no regard to their oblation. I have not taken one donkey from any of them, nor have I wronged any of them. And then he warns them there's going to be a type of punishment that has never been seen. And as you said, the earth swallows them. And then what? Oh, we did this already. Did that miracle solve the problem? So now, if we go back to what happened right after they got swallowed. Let's look at the verses. They were in big trouble. They got into bigger troubles, actually. Do you see verse 33? They went down into Sheol. Or no? Do you see it?
Yes, yes.
32.
And then chapter 17.
Oh, yes. Yeah. A fire consumed.
Fire. And then more complaints. Next day, the whole Israelite community, verse 6, railed against Moses and Aaron, saying, you two have brought death upon Adonai's people. And the whole congregation gathered against them. It didn't help at all. And now there is a plague. God's saying, I'm going to raise yourselves from the community. I will annihilate them. And then Moses says to Aaron, take the fire pan, put on it fire from the altar, add incense, take it quickly, run to the community, make expiation for them. For the wrath has gone forth for Adonai, the plague has begun. And only after he does that, as Moses commanded him, he runs with the Ktoret, with the incense, and he stops the Magifah, the plague, right? Verse 13. So let's go back to the swallowing. That didn't teach anybody a lesson. So how come? How come Moses decided that should be their punishment when, what kind of punishment is that when it doesn't teach anybody anything and they go right back? So here's a beautiful explanation by Rabbi Sachs. I'm going to let him have let him explain it. It's really interesting what he says. We've seen several of his videos. He's very engaging. And now we are going to see him explain
This week, in Parashat Korach, we read about one of the great rebellions in Jewish history. Korach and his group of followers and fellow rebels mount a protest against the leadership of Moses and Aaron, and Moses makes a dramatic intervention. And I'm going to call this How Not to End a Rebellion. So let's begin at the beginning. Korach rebels. Korach and his followers rebel against Moses, and they challenge his leadership. Rala madua titnatsu al kahal Hashem. We're all holy. Why do you lift yourself up above us? Why do you give yourself airs and graces? It's too much. Korach rebels. Korach, son of Kohat, the son of Levi, who was very envious that he wasn't made a Cohen. Then there were some people from the tribe of Reuven. Don't forget, Reuven was Jacob's firstborn son, so how come none of the Reubenites got positions of leadership? And there were 250 Israelite men from other tribes, well-known community leaders. How come nobody invited us? In other words, it was a typical Jewish broiges. Why weren't we invited? Why aren't we on the leadership team? And so on. And the question is, what happens next? And as you know, something rather dramatic happens. Moses prays that the ground opens up and swallows his followers alive. He says, if the Lord brings about something totally new, and the earth opens its mouth and swallows them with everything that belongs to them, and they go down alive into the realm of the dead, then I'm the leader and not them. Now, I would call that a pretty reasonable way of ending a conflict. Would we not like all those people who are against us, that the ground should open up and swallow them alive? You would have thought that's a pretty effective means of conflict resolution. Well, you would have thought, since what Moses prayed to happen happened, and happened immediately, it would have ended the conflict. Right? What happens next? The next day, the whole Israelite community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. You've killed the Lord's people, they said. It didn't end the conflict. They are still complaining. And something very serious then happens. God sends a plague against the people. The plague has started, says Moses. Go and do something, says Aaron. And by the end, 14,700 people died from the plague. It did not end the conflict. Now, this is odd, because we know that if you have a really serious problem and you want a miracle to prove your point, and the miracle happens, the miracle solves the problem. You remember, Moses says, "Hein lo yaminu li," they won't believe me. God says, you want to persuade the Israelites that you're the guy, take your staff and it'll turn into a snake and they'll believe you. And you know what? He took the staff, it turned into a snake, and they believed him. Moses says, but Pharaoh won't listen to me. Moses says, well, show him some signs, and if he doesn't believe the signs, I'll send a plague, and if he doesn't believe that, I'll send another plague, and another plague, and by the time we get to plague 3, lice, already the Egyptian magicians, who can do most things, but not lice, definitely not on the curriculum of being a magician, and they say, Etzba Elokim, it's God's way. God does the miracle, and the result happens. The most famous of all, Elijah and the 400 prophets of Baal at Mount Carmel. Elijah says, let's have an open contest, prepare a sacrifice, see if God sends down fire or if Baal sends down fire, and we'll see. And the prophets of Baal try, and they pray, and nothing happens. And Elijah says, shout a bit louder. Maybe your God's asleep. Maybe there's trouble on the mobile phone, and he hasn't got the message. Anyway, they try and try and try. Nothing happens. Elijah makes a prayer to God. Fire comes down, and everyone says, Hashem hu Elokim. The last words we say on Ne'ilah, on Yom Kippur, Hashem hu Elokim. So the result is that you got a problem, you have a miracle and a problem, right? But it didn't happen here. It did not happen here. The truth is that the miracle didn't end the problem. And do you know why? Hang on. Do you know what did solve the problem? God says to Moses, take 12 sticks, one from each tribe, and just wait and see which one stops being a dead piece of wood and start sprouting leaves and blossoms and fruit. And Aaron's rod brings out leaves and flowers and shkedim and almonds, and everyone knows Aaron was chosen to be the priest. That ended the conflict. And only that ended the conflict. Why? Because the truth is that right at the beginning, Moses got it right. Right at the beginning. He realized that Korach and all his rebels were not rebelling against Moses. They were rebelling against Aaron. They knew Moses was the leader. Only he could speak to God. Only he could bring about miracles. Only he could send the plagues. Only he could divide the Red Sea. Nobody's going to challenge a guy with leadership credentials like that. But your number two, Aaron, well, we're as good as Aaron. And that's what they wanted. Their real challenge was against Aaron. And Moses knew this at the beginning. But now you're trying to get the priesthood too? You know, isn't it enough that you slapped the ark? Now you want to be Kohen Gadol as well? Who is Aaron that you should grumble against him? At the beginning, Moses knew the problem isn't Moses, but Aaron. The trouble is that the more they needle him and complain, he kind of forgets and starts thinking that they're attacking him. See what he says? This is how you will know that the Lord has sent me, that it was not my idea. God chose me, right? As the pressure mounts, he suddenly forgets the real issue, which is Aaron, and he starts taking it personally. If the miracle happens, this will prove I didn't make this up. I was chosen by God. He takes it personally. And at that moment, the conflict has been taken on by Moses, and Moses starts defending himself. And when that happens, you're in trouble. But the principle is never take it personally. That is the point. Do you remember what actually sealed Moses' fate much later? Do you remember? Moses struck the rock, and that was the sin for which he was not able to take the people into the land. What did he say? Moses said to them, listen, you rebels, must we bring you water from this rock? He personalized it. What? Must we bring him water? It wasn't about can Moses bring water, it's can God bring water. But he takes their challenge about the water personally, and he loses his cool and gets angry with him, and that seals his fate. He's not privileged to take the people out of the land. Never take it personally. And where did it begin? It began with Korach. When Moses, under great stress, facing this challenge, forgot that it wasn't about him at all. It was about the priesthood. When you take it personally, you lose your cool, you get angry, you start becoming defensive, aggressive, and then it becomes ad hominem, up close and personal. And when a leader takes it personally, he ceases to be a leader. Rule, very simple. Never take it personally. Shabbat shalom.
All right. Any comments, questions?
Very nice.
Yep.
Yeah.